السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا بكم في حلقة جديدة من جسور. وضيفي اليوم هو الكاتب والفنان والموسيقي والمخرج والناشط السياسي البريطاني جاستن بتشر. Justin, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Azam. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Probably when we broadcast this will be the evening, but it doesn't matter. It's nearly more than 10 years when you directed The Madness of George Dubya. And I remember a friend of mine who is a prominent presenter on Al Jazeera, Ahmed Mansour, was visiting me here in London, and I said to him, we must go and see this play. And it was hilarious. I was reading one of the reviews for the play, and it said at the time that probably the play came as a consolation for the 50% of the British population who opposed the war on Iraq. Now, probably in hindsight, it is a consolation that so many people today believe that both George Bush and Tony Blair must have been war criminals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you really think that the play played a role in creating awareness about this?
I think that's right. Yeah, I think it provided a valve, a pressure valve of release for the frustration of lots of people in Britain who I think felt that someone was saying at last what they had all been thinking for a long time. You know, that this was an insane adventure. We were sleepwalking into this war at the behest of the Americans, and that it was crazy and without any justification and extremely foolhardy, and was going to unleash enormous suffering on the people of Iraq and across the region, destabilize the region, and that there was no justification for it. So there was an incredible anger and sense of disbelief. I mean, throughout Europe. I think of all the European nations that participated militarily in the Iraq War, in every case there was a majority opinion poll against the war. You know, in Italy, in Spain, in Lithuania, in Poland, you know, in Britain, the majority opinion was polled.
But isn't that an amazing failure of democracy?
Incredible failure of democracy, absolutely. And I think it had an effect in a disengagement from, you know, politics and a sort of an erosion of trust. You know, in public life. That, I mean, for those of us who campaigned for weeks and months against the Iraq War, and of course, famously, there were 2 million people marching in Hyde Park, you know, against it, and the biggest demonstrations across the world in history against the war. You know, that there was a mass global mobilization against this, and that it made no impact on the Bush-Blair axis. You know,
and yet today, although all the facts are there for everybody to see, and despite the fact that under different circumstances, probably both men, George Bush and Tony Blair, would have been brought to trial. Nothing has happened.
Well, absolutely, and we've heard recently that the Chilcot inquiry, you know, this long and costly inquiry into the war, the causes of the war, and its justification, is not going to report before the general election, which has caused enormous, I think, disappointment and the cynicism, yes, I mean, I think if one looks at the consequences over 11 years of millions, a death toll of more than 1 million people, certainly in Iraq, and another million or so gone into exile, and desperate situation of sectarian violence and civil war and total chaos now in Iraq, and in surrounding parts of the region, and you know, where do you start? Where do you start when you try to summarize the catastrophic effects of...
Even today. I mean, the phenomenon we see today, ISIS and the havoc throughout the region, whether you're talking about Asia, or you're talking about Yemen, you're talking about North Africa, in Libya, or in Egypt as a result of the coup against democracy. You cannot dissociate this from the war on both Afghanistan and Iraq more than 10 years ago.
Absolutely, and I think historians will look back in disbelief that those of the West, that we could have been so stupid, that as the new century arrived, that all sorts of challenges facing humanity, not least the environmental challenge in the 21st century. How are we going to befriend our planet and learn to live with it, rather than gobbling up the natural resources and, heating the global warming and so on. Famine and poverty in Africa, AIDS, any number of massive challenges facing humanity, and the idea that instead we squandered the opportunity in a decade or more of pointless wars and alienation of the Middle East and of the Arab world and of between Christians and Muslims, and all of this, I think, as I say, historians will look back in disbelief. We were told back in 2003, for those who don't remember, that this was a pressing danger, that Saddam Hussein was this appalling, threat, to even British and European interests, and that there were these deadly weapons poised to strike, and that there were links with Al Qaeda and all of this rubbish, which
Al Qaeda hadn't been in existence there.
Absolutely. If you wanted to find one country in the Middle East where Al Qaeda was certainly not operating, the most sort of secular country in it was Iraq, and so. But everybody knew this. I mean, this is the extraordinary thing, that those of us in the no camp, as it were, those of us campaigning against the Iraq war, were absolutely clear about this, and yet, politicians were lined up and persuaded, as we know now, to support this.
The whole of Parliament.
Yes.
Now, was that the beginning of your activist life, or were you an activist and interested in politics earlier than the war on Iraq?
Well, yes, I was earlier than this, yeah. I mean, my engagement, I suppose, with the sort of peace and justice movement came really from teenage years onwards, through my church, through my faith, through, for example, the Greenbelt Arts Festival, through my engagement with the charity, the Amos Trust, and a sort of movement within the UK sort of world of the church, the arts, and the campaigning world, peace and justice, where I found myself, as I was growing up, going to university and developing a career as a playwright, as an actor, director, working in the theatre, increasingly drawn towards this space between the worlds of the arts, faith, and justice. And this kind of nexus of the three things, and found a sense of, I don't know, calling, or a sense of, that this was, I had some gifts and a strong attraction towards this kind of path, of writing about and producing work about situations of injustice.
And when did Palestine come in? Because I can see that nearly over the past several years you've been going to Palestine, you've been doing some work on Palestine. When did this start?
Well, I mean, the earliest awareness I have is really as a kid, aged around 11 or 12. This is the time of Israel's invasion of Lebanon. I remember my parents being very exercised about this, so you already had activism within the family. Absolutely, and that my parents, as a sort of middle-class British white British middle-class professional family, were somewhat dissenting, dissenting view, and wanted to talk about the appalling injustices visited on Palestinians. So I was aware of that from an age of sort of 11 or 12. I even tried to organize a debate at school when I was about 12, about this issue, and eventually the teacher said that she didn't want to do it because it was too controversial. But and in fact, I mean, my godmother was German Jewish originally, subsequently converted to Christianity, but she was born in Palestine. Her father had been an early Zionist settler, immigrant, from Germany in the early years of the 20th century. He'd gone to Palestine as part of one of the aliyahs, and didn't like it, and went back to Germany. So just in time for the Nazis, and then he and his daughter escaped subsequently to England. And so there was even a sort of connection and an awareness there through my godmother. So it goes back some way, and then through my involvement with the anti-war movement, through writing the play The Madness of George Dubya, and becoming very connected with a big collective, a consortium of different progressive movements against the Iraq War, drew me much more closely into engagement with the Palestinian story, and a feeling that I needed to try to put some energy into helping in some way that I could with telling the Palestinian story.
Now, I've read that recently you went to Palestine to work on a project of rebuilding a house that was demolished by the Israelis. But when was the first visit ever to Palestine?
My first visit was March 2012. And I went with a group of British artists who were sponsored by the Amos Trust and the Greenbelt Arts Festival, visiting a number of projects in the West Bank supported by those organizations. And that was when I had my first encounter with the wall in Bethlehem, which was a very shocking and profound experience. And my reaction to it was almost immediate, saying to my companions, well, what we should do, what we should do? We should build this in London.
Yes.
It was instant. It was like almost as a joke, saying that then people would see, because that's...
And it was shocking when it happened.
Yeah. But I mean, the struggle we have is such massive level of ignorance in the West, even amongst so-called educated liberal elite. A really appalling level of ignorance about the reality on the ground in Palestine and Israel, and so to create an experiential, a sort of reality, an installation that would give people some sense of the reality of the wall. As well, it was almost, as I say, a joke to start with, and then it kind of was stuck in my brain and wouldn't let go, and so it's a feeling. This germ kind of grew and grew and grew. And then I found a partner in Lucy Winkett and St James's Piccadilly. Lucy is the chair of the trustees for the Amos Trust. So she, as I should perhaps explain to your readers, as an Anglican priest, a Church of England priest at St James's Piccadilly in central London, is one of the brightest leading intellectual voices in the church today. She's chair of trustees for the Amos Trust, so she's been going to Palestine for 12, 13 years and already deeply engaged in these issues. She's also someone with a background as a professional singer and a deep appreciation of the arts. And so this idea, this project appealed to her enormously, of using a creative, artistic, and quite mischievous piece of work, in a way, at Christmas time, in central London, to build this massive, ugly wall.
Now, apart from the art and the technical work involved, were there any political challenges, impediments?
Well, not as much as we expected. I mean, we were very nervous, thinking that someone would try to stop us, you know, so we kept our plans secret until the last possible minute.
So suddenly people come and see a wall.
Absolutely. So we announced, first of all, that there would be a festival for 2 weeks over the Christmas period, and that this was, again, sort of perhaps backtracking a little bit on the story, from this first trip in March 2012 through to the realization of this idea was about 18 months. So it was Christmas 2013 in the end when the project came to fruition. But what we did was to announce that there would be a festival called Bethlehem Unwrapped for 2 weeks over Christmas at St. James's Piccadilly. And it would be a celebration of Palestinian culture, particularly of the culture and the life of the people of Bethlehem, and in solidarity with the Bethlehemites at Christmas time. Christmas, people's thoughts turn to Bethlehem, you know, in Christmas carols, in Christmas cards, and this sort of thing. And in Britain, the image of Bethlehem, which most people have, is a sentimental, slightly fantasy image from the poetry of Christmas carols and from a kind of biblical image of Bethlehem 2,000 years ago. And there's almost no awareness of the reality. This is a modern Palestinian city. Yes, it's been inhabited for 5,000 years, but it's a real place.
And it's segregated. And
absolutely, and there's a wall around it now, and that it's been separated from its farmland and from its various suburbs, and that it's in, and obviously primarily from Jerusalem, you know, and so there's a desperate stranglehold, economically, culturally, psychologically, around the city of Bethlehem, and we wanted to speak about this story at Christmas time. So first of all, we announced that there would be a festival, music and comedy and food and dance and film and this sort of thing, with lots of wonderful artists on the bill, Layla Sansour and Nigel Kennedy and Jeremy Hardy and Mark Steele, and all, you know, a great program. But we didn't reveal the reality about the wall until really the day when it started. So it went up in one day. We've been building it in secret.
Yeah, I saw some of the responses of the people who were watching it, and they were really shocked. Yeah. Right in the center of London.
Absolutely.
Now, you know that traditionally Christian Protestants in particular in this country were sympathized with the Zionist project somehow because of what happened in Europe. Now, do you think that what is happening to Bethlehem now is changing people's perceptions?
Well, I hope so. I mean, of course, that, and I would say even it went back beyond that. You know, the Lord Balfour and there was a Christian Zionist component in the British establishment 100 years ago when the whole project, you know, began. But I think, in answer to your question, yes, I do. I think there is an awareness spreading increasingly amongst the churches in the UK that there are Christians in the Holy Land and that they are Arabic Palestinian Christians, and that it's a different story from the one that they've grown up with.
It would seem to me that an increasing number of Christian institutions are taking part actively in BDIS.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Especially divestment.
Yes.
There was an issue to do with Caterpillar and church investments.
That's right. Well, the Anglican Church has reconsidered its position, you know, with regarding its investment in Caterpillar. The Methodist Church is strongly in support of BDS. And while I was out there last year, there was a big vote in the Presbyterian Church in the States about divesting from Israel, and which they won, you know, which was successful. So in fact I was in the Aida refugee camp, you know, the day that this vote was happening there, and there's a piece of graffiti on the wall there, Presbyterians divest, it said, you know, and then we heard later on that day. Now that's symbolic. I mean, the economic impact, of course, of the Presbyterian Church in America divesting is probably not, you know, enormous, but
it is symbolic. But actually, as far as the Israelis are concerned, they take it very seriously.
Yes, absolutely. So then the other significant movement which is spreading in the UK churches is the Kairos Palestine call. You know, that Kairos Palestine, of course, is a declaration and a document forged by all the different Christian denominations of the Holy Land, coming together for the first time in their history to send out a call, as they call it, a cry for hope. You know, where there is no hope, will you help us to get our freedom back? And standing together to make a condemnation of the occupation as a sin against God and man, because it causes so much suffering. And so there is most definitely an awakening to this going on in churches throughout the UK. And this is also spreading in positive cultural ways too, you know, through theatre, through dance. You know, my wife, for example, works for a company, Zaytoun, which imports Palestinian olive oil from the West Bank, based here in the Arab British Centre in London. And so this wonderful, you know, Palestinian produce, you know, olive oil and maftool and dates and za'atar and so on, you know, is becoming increasingly popular. And through churches. I mean, that's one of their main distributors, is fair trade shops in churches up and down the country. So I think the message both of campaigning at BDS and protest, but also positive celebration of Palestinian culture is becoming, you know, more visible.
I've read your piece about your most recent visit, and that coincided with the you know, the case of the 3 Israeli settlers who were kidnapped, etc. And you call it Live from Bethlehem. And apparently you were there part of that project to rebuild a house that was demolished.
Yes, I mean that hasn't happened yet actually, but several of the organizations that I support and work with, Amos Trust, ICAD in Israel, you know, the Israeli Committee.
So you're working on this project?
Yeah, they do, but they do this quite regularly. They do a house rebuild. Yes, rebuilding a demolished house somewhere in the West Bank, once a year or maybe once every 2 years, and so there'll be another project of this kind coming up.
How is this seen by the Israelis?
Well, I mean, it varies, you know. I mean, sometimes they will turn up and have a look, see what's going on, and all the volunteers just carry on with what they do, head down, you know, keep digging or whatever. Sometimes it's ignored completely, but then subsequently these houses will be demolished again. So the project is a symbolic form, a non-violent form of protest against the occupation and an assertion of the family's determination to remain on their land. So in some cases, I mean, there's a house, for example, in East Jerusalem, in the village of Anata, that's been demolished 5 times now. And Salim Shawamre and his family live in the tent next door to their house. But they keep rebuilding the house with the help of international friends. It's not first and foremost to provide themselves with somewhere to live. That's an incidental benefit, as it were. First and foremost, it's as an act of resistance.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, what's the story of Go to Gaza, Drink the Sea?
Well, that was a project I helped create in 2009. It was very simple. The end of 2008, of course, Operation Cast Lead began, the attack on Gaza, and
you've ever been to Gaza?
No. One of my very close friends, Ahmad Massoud, is a writer from Gaza, his wife, in fact, is a founder of Zaytoun, the company I mentioned just now, and so works with my wife. And I was so upset, exercised, angry, appalled by the images in the newspapers and the reports on television and on the radio about the attack on Gaza, that I felt I had to try to make a piece of work in response to this. This has been the pattern through my career as a writer and producer, that in a response to some kind of injustice, I get an idea and feel that I have to try to make a piece of work in response to it. And then I always tell myself to put this away, because, you know, I never have any money or resources, or, you know, and the effort of creating a new piece of work seems too great always, but it won't go away. You know, so as with the madness of George W. And as with Go to Gaza and with the Wall Project and so on, it was a response, a very, very deep, visceral response to a situation of really palpable injustice. So I wrote to all of my friends and contacts and said I have it in mind to try to create an immediate piece of work, a theatre piece, in response to the attack on Gaza. And I said, if anybody wants to support me, you tell me by the end of this week. If I've this week, 1 week, and if I've raised £5,000 by the end of this week, then I will do it. And the response was overwhelming, you know, immediate, you know.
And it took off.
It took off. And my friends at the Amos Trust, Garth Hewitt at Amos Trust, said, you must talk to this guy, Ahmed Massoud. He's had a letter published in The Guardian expressing how it feels to be from Gaza in London and to see your country being bombed, being attacked, and even to see members of his own family on television, you know, running through the streets, you know. I mean, he saw his brother at one point running through the streets with a dead child in his arms, and he thought that was one of his nephews. And in fact, as it turned out, it was somebody else's child. But so what? What does it matter? It could have been, you know. Sure. And so Ahmed had this a number of letters published in the media as a Gazan writing from London, and so we were connected. We got together and became friends immediately, and decided to collaborate on this piece of work, which would be a combination of documentary theatre, sort of verbatim reenactment of some of the stories on the news, dance, live music, film, and also a kind of dramatic, a fictitious dramatic framework. And we decided to call it Go to Gaza, Drink the Sea, after the famous Arafat.
Yes.
You know.
If you don't like it, drink the sea.
Absolutely.
That's an Arab proverb.
I try to remember if I can say it in Arab.
يشرب البحر.
Yeah, يشرب من بحر غزة.
يشرب من بحر غزة.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was a rough and ready piece of work. We drew together a very talented cast of British and Palestinian performers, and the singer and oud player Nizar Al-Issa, and Ahmed, of course, was able to choreograph the Dubya, because he runs and founded the Palestinian dance company Al Zaytuna in London. And we worked with Theatre Technis in Mornington Crescent in Camden Town, and we put this piece of work together very quickly. So it opened, I think, in March of 2009, really a couple of weeks after the sort of immediate end of
quite quick,
very quick, and there was a lot of attention focused on it. The design was particularly extraordinary. We're working with a Scottish artist, Jane Frere, to create the set design, which was thousands and thousands of shoes, painted grey like the rubble of Gaza, and these great towering mounds of shoes representing the dead, representing the absence of the dead. And when we came to this particular scene, which was to reenact the story of the Al-Samuni family, who famously were, or infamously,
saddest of all stories.
They were herded together into one house. I think 43 members or 46 members of one family.
And then decimated.
Yeah. And we decided to try to depict this through a kind of almost like a religious ritual, where we had Nizar Al-Issa was playing the oud and singing this lament, and they actors told the story of what happened, and they were forming a kind of, like a photograph, a family tableau, like a photograph of the members of the family. And then as the song continued, they went out into the different parts of the rubble, retrieving these pairs of shoes, and they were speaking the names of the members of the family. So all the different names of saying, you know, so-and-so at aged 15 years, aged 16, aged 43 years. And each time they would take a pair of shoes, maybe a child's pair of shoes or a lady or a man's or whatever, and bring them and then placing them in a circle, so that gradually this circle was built of shoes, empty pairs of shoes. And these shoes were coloured, you know, not like the grey shoes of everything else, but those are real shoes, you know. And these names built and built and built, and this sense of this great circle of absence. And it was a very risky thing to do, because in theatrical terms, we didn't know if it would work, whether it would just be very boring, you know, and people would, you know, be sitting there thinking.
What was the feedback?
It was incredible. It was one of the most extraordinary experiences that I've ever had in the theatre, because what was happening was, for the public, they were being drawn into a religious ritual. It was not Christian or Muslim or Jewish. It was a sort of non-specific, you know, but it was a lamentation for, a memory, a commemoration of these people who had died so recently, speaking all of their names and building this picture of the absence of this family. And it was something that went beyond the theatre. You know, it was not just a piece of theatre, it was something.
It's like a documentary.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been a great pleasure having you, Justin, and I wish you luck with the rest of your projects.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, Azam.
Thank you. وشكرا لكم على حسن المتابعة، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.